Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Belleville, Illinois is the most populous city south of Springfield according to a 2012 census population of 43,765. Belleville, which means beautiful city, was incorporated as a village in 1819. After it became a city in the 1850s, a large number of immigrants arrived from Germany. By 1870, about 90% of the city's population was either German-born or German descent. After the Civil War, immense deposits of bituminous coal were found in Clair County, and by 1874, 100 shaft mines were in operation in and around Belleville. As a result, Belleville became a wealthy manufacturing center. 100 years later, much of the wealth created by manufacturing was going or gone. Like most of the old Northwest Territory, Belleville fell on hard times. Our guest today, Dallas Cook, says he's trying to help the Belleville city government correct problems and make it operate more effectively. In 2013, at the age of 27, he was elected as the Belleville City Clerk, beating a 16-year incumbent. During this half hour, he and I will discuss what it's like to run for office and what it's like being the city clerk of Belleville. Dallas Cook, welcome to Conversation.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
What made you decide you wanted to go into government at the tender age of 27?
Well, honestly, I never thought I would. I had seen myself working from the outside, trying to make an impact as an activist, working a lot in Missouri as well as Illinois. And at one point, I realized I needed to get involved in a local level. I was more concerned about who was going to be the next senator or who was going to be the next president. And then at that time, I realized I've got to look at my local leaders and I've got to hold them accountable. They are the ones that we can touch. They have the greatest impact on our life. So that's what drew me to city government. And I actually attended a fundraiser for a mayoral candidate in Belleville. And after hearing what he had seen over the last few years as an alderman, I realized I was immediately going to get myself involved in my city, which I love. And I couldn't wait any longer to see it become anything less than what I believe it can be.
Well, you know, we just had local elections,
right.
Both in Illinois and in Missouri, and it's amazing to me how few people actually show up for these local elections to vote. Sometimes sometimes less than 10%, sometimes maybe as much as 20%, but usually it's closer to 12. I don't understand why people see it that way. They're more, like you said, senator. Right. They're more concerned about voting for president or senator or congressman than they are in the people who decide whether they can park in front of their own house.
Exactly. It's very disappointing. But I think what happens is people see that, well, I don't really care because it doesn't matter, and they, are just going to hire everybody who they want anyway. They're going to do what they want anyway. It doesn't really matter. But the fact is, it does matter. In Belleville, we have 16 aldermen. And so for a city of our size, even though we are not a small village or town, we do have so many aldermen that you can reach out and contact them. If we have 16 aldermen and 50,000 citizens, you've only got a few thousand per alderman. So we should be calling them and talking to them, and you should know where they stand. And that should bring you out to vote just in and of itself. Mm-hmm. If you call an alderman and they never get back to you, that's a problem in a city like ours. Like I said, if you only have a couple thousand constituents, you need to be able to reach out and you need to be able to talk with them. And if they can't at least give that to you, then that's not somebody you want representing you.
Well, that's one of the benefits of having, small government.
Right.
I mean, even though we're talking about, 40 to 50,000 population in Belleville, that's still a pretty manageable size community.
It is.
We're not talking like St. Louis,
right.
where if you want to talk to one of the aldermen, that can be tough.
Absolutely.
You want to talk to the mayor, that's near impossible mm-hmm. as an individual. But you can talk to the mayor of Belleville, you can talk to your alderman, you can talk to your city clerk.
Absolutely, you can.
So so you ran for office. What was that like?
It was interesting. I knew I had an uphill battle, and even my closest friends and family said, don't put yourself through that. Belleville's a very tough town to win. You have to be, quite the Democratic Party, machine type of person. You have to earn your keep there. You have to work as a precinct committeeman, and you have to do this and, help these people and do that. And that even motivated me to run even more. Because that's so frustrating to hear that, well, you're not even allowed to run for something. No, anybody can run for anything that they want. It disgusts me to think that you're going to try to tell people, well, you have to do this first. No, if somebody wants to run, they should run, and more power to them. But no, everybody was very discouraging because I think they just didn't want me to go through any heartbreak and disappointment because they know that my heart would be in the right place and I would be very much into the race. However, it turned out I was able to beat a 16-year incumbent due to the fact that I walked every door. I knocked on every single one. I talked to a lot of great people. And so I knew going into Election Day I had nothing to be nervous about. I felt very confident. And so it was very enjoyable. I loved campaigning. I loved getting out to talk to people. And I still enjoy talking to everybody now. So it's been fantastic.
Now, you mentioned Democrat. Are you a Democrat?
No, I'm not. I would consider myself to lean Republican. However, my party affiliation is independent. In the local election, we do not have in the city or have ever had anybody run as a Republican or a Democrat.
Yours is a nonpartisan city then, or
it
is
is not.
Oh, it's not.
Actually, if somebody wanted to run as a Democrat or Republican, they could. They just have not done so.
There's a lot of towns where
they pass an ordinance.
Everybody runs nonpartisan. There's no
Absolutely.
There's no party affiliation.
Right. Well, typically in the city of Belleville, we have a one-party rule, a one party that controls the city, and it was the Good Government Party. So in 2013, the Good Government Party ran a mayor, the incumbent mayor. Then they ran the incumbent treasurer, incumbent clerk, and then 8 incumbent aldermen. And so typically they just walk to the finish line. Well, this time I think they underestimated, especially myself, a little bit. And so I caught them off guard and was able to beat them. But typically that is not something that happens there. Now, if you fast forward to today, this last election, they dissolved their party. And it's one of those situations where they determined that their party ID was so weak that if they even had a good candidate who was going to run with them, that good candidate would be hurt just by their bad name. And I do believe that it's something that in 2013 during that campaign, we were able to point out a lot of the flaws with one party rule and with machine rule and with just one group of people, controlling your local government. It's not a good thing. And I think people realize that. And that's what led them to dissolve their party. And I do take pride in the fact that I was part of that.
How many people, before I was talking about how few people vote
right.
In local city elections. You were elected in 2013.
Right.
Then we've just had the 2015 local elections. About how many people are voting in these elections?
Not very many. I think we had in 2013, we had about 25%. And then this last one, as you said, it was closer to about 14% in the city of Belleville. So 25% of, 25,000 plus eligible voters, I won, I believe, 3,300 to 3,000. So there were only 6,300 votes cast in the clerk's race out of a possible almost 27,000. So that's not good.
So it's about you're right, like you said, a quarter.
Right. And I think, the other party would like to have claimed that if more people would have voted, it would have been better for them. I think the opposite is true. But I believe if more people were actually to vote, most people would vote for change at this point in time. A lot of people are tired of the same people running, the same people, garnering pensions and garnering all these years of service. And I think they were ready to change it up. Now, however, most of those people who are ready for change don't vote. They just complain. And that's fair enough, I understand, but you need to go vote.
Well, what made you just think that the 16-year incumbent was no longer doing the job that you wanted to see
right.
done and you wanted to do it yourself?
Right. And I wouldn't say she ever did a bad job. She was a master municipal clerk. She knew the job very well. The only issue that she had a man who was technically her boss, when really every single citizen in the city is my boss. I have 45,000 bosses, and I like it that way because they can call me and I have to answer to them, and it's something I do. Now, for her, it was more the party boss. It was the mayor who, anything she did, she would talk to him about first. And they would do it collaboratively, or they would do it politically. Or I wanted somebody to be able to sit at that council meeting, and when the mayor turns over and he would ask her name was Linda, he would say, "Is that right, Linda?" And every time Linda would say, "Yes, that's right, Mayor." Well, I wanted to be able to sit there and just tell the truth, because sometimes the truth is the most important thing for the public to hear or understand, because they never get it. You don't get it in government, and honestly, you never even get it from the media, the newspaper. You don't get to know what's really going on unless you talk to somebody who is sitting there. I think somebody told me, now that you're in their house, you get to see the dirty laundry. And that's actually something that's true. You get to see how a local government really operates. It would astonish you. There are some things that are great. We look at city employees or government employees in a negative light sometimes, and that's not true. The people who are doing the work for the city of Belleville are fantastic. I mean, we couldn't get any better people. Now, the political hacks and the appointed people, who don't do their job and who are garnering the highest salaries for the least amount of work, yeah, those people are a problem, absolutely. But the real problem is the person you elected who put them there to be able to milk your tax dollars away and give you no services. But we need to honor those people who are making, $12 to $15 an hour working their butt off. And they do a great job at it for no honor for them, and they watch everyone else take the credit. But those are good people.
Well, you indicated before when you were saying, "Is that right, Linda?" And then she said,
Right.
Was the mayor saying something that was not right, that she was simply agreeing and saying that is right even though it's not? Is that what you're saying here?
Yeah, I am. I think that he would say that he had done some things, or that they had looked into some things that maybe they didn't do their due diligence on. We've recently seen that come up, where we had an alderman who actually just lost his election because he was painted as too negative. But regarding this new development we have possibly taking place on Route 15 across from the Shrine of Our Lady of the Snows, he asked some good questions. Have you vetted the developer that you're about to give $19 million in incentives to and put in a $3 million sewer just so they can put this development there? Have you looked into that? Have you done this? Do you know that they're properly vetted? Well, our mayor, his simple answer was that, well, the Shrine did that. It went all the way to Rome. Well, I don't care what Rome thinks. I care what is good for the city of Belleville. The Shrine, it's a great place. And the mayor keeps talking about how the Shrine needs this to survive. I agree, the Shrine needs some help too. But my main goal is not to serve the Shrine. It's to serve the best interest of the people of Belleville. And that's what that alderman was doing when he was asking those questions. However, he got painted so negatively. And then you have the mayor, he doesn't have a good answer.
He got painted negatively because he was asking whether or not all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted.
Yes, sir. And that did cost him his election because of the way he was portrayed.
However, by whom was he portrayed this
by
way?
the former Good Government Party, which although it did not put that name on the ballot, they still had their full slate of candidates.
And he was not a part of that group?
Absolutely not.
I see.
And, he didn't get anywhere with his questioning because the mayor would say, the city didn't vet them. However, the Catholic Church did. And the mayor also claimed to have called some mayors that the developers had worked with before. Well, it turned out that that wasn't true. He had claimed to talk to a mayor. Somebody talked to the mayor the next day. He never talked to him. And not that that's a gross lie, or not that that's something to get all upset about. And it's not. I'm okay with him telling a misrepresentation of the truth. I'm not going to get too hard on him on that. However, you should have done your due diligence. The city itself should have looked into this a lot more than just to trust the word of others.
Well, in your opinion, is Belleville being well run? And by that I mean the business side of Belleville. Is it being well run? Is money being spent correctly, or is it being wasted?
No, it is not being spent correctly. It is being wasted. It's very hard for me to get a couple $1,000s to bring my office up to today's day and age, just to get proper software and proper ability to scan. And our goal right now is to get every single document the city has, and not only put it on the internet, but make it searchable. So to do things like that, it requires certain technology. Well, my office, when I walked in the door, it's full of typewriters and old computers, and it's no software at all. We're just running the way it was ran 30 years ago. And I needed to do something about it. So I immediately, try to attain some of these things. Well, I am constantly told, I don't know how we can get you that $2,000. But then I have to sit there and watch every single department head get a raise. I have to sit there and watch while we subsidize major corporations just to get them to do business with our city.
How is that?
Through the use of TIF. And
But that's not coming out of the actual treasury of the city.
not the general fund.
Right.
No, it is not. But what we do
You're
is,
not in competition with them to get software.
well, in my opinion, I feel like we are. Because what happens is with TIF, they use that money, to help out the corporation, say, Kroger, and to get them to put a grocery store there. So they give them a couple $100,000. Or they buy a lot down at the bottom of the hill from somebody for a couple $100,000 because it's an eyesore, or what have you. Well, then so-and-so street doesn't get fixed, because TIF can be used for those kind of improvements. So then we're looking back, okay, well, how are we going to prioritize whose street will get fixed? The city hasn't oiled and chipped in 5 years. We haven't made no updates to our roads, and that's what I feel like TIF should be used for. But instead, we try to finagle as much as we can out of the general fund and move money around and take advantage of motor fuel tax and other ways that we can pay for those items and use that. But I feel like it's all coming from the same pool. No matter how you look at it, there's all these funny ways that we create, or receive tax money. And I think it all comes from the same place, and it all comes from the taxpayer within our city. And no matter what fund it is, I feel like I am competing with that. And so it does make me disappointed when I see money spent in a less frugal way, when I could really put it to good use to help better serve the citizens. And it happens often.
Have you received this money, and are you getting the software
I
that
have.
you need?
I've been able to do some very good things with what little I've had to use.
Mm-hmm.
We do have new FOIA software now for the Freedom of Information Act. That was one of the most important things to me, that we made documents available to the citizens.
And what does that do?
Well, now it's an easy way for them to ask for the information. You don't have to come up to City Hall. You don't have to receive a stack of paper. You don't have to pay for paper. You simply log into our FOIA software. You ask, you request any kind of documentation that the city has. It goes out to every single department.
What would be an example of a type of question that you might receive from the public?
Say they would like to have all the claims from a certain engineering firm. How much has been paid out, every invoice received from a company doing business with the city.
Okay.
Or it could be anything. It could be they want to see my emails, which you could ask for. You could FOIA for that. Or the mayor's cell phone log because he has a taxpayer-funded cell phone. Anything you want, you can get if we have it. Mm-hmm. But that's the goal of the software too, is to make it so that everyone knows that they're required to comply with these requests. And then I have an ability to check in and make sure every single department has looked at that and then checked off whether or not they have any documents relating or pertaining to that request. Mm-hmm. And then we immediately send it on to the person who requested it as soon as we possibly can.
And was this considered controversial in Belleville to put this information online?
Everything's controversial in Belleville.
Well, was this considered controversial?
A little bit. Some of the aldermen
I would think that people, yes, citizens are entitled to know. It used to be you'd have to actually go up and go through the paperwork.
Right.
You're saying that you're just making it easier for people to be able to keep an eye on where money's being spent.
Right. It was a little controversial. I don't think anybody was against the software per se. The only question that was raised was, was I doing this to try to place blame on somebody who wasn't providing documentation? Because we've had trouble with FOIA requests in the past. My office will receive all requests. However, I cannot guarantee that, say, the mayor's office will give you that documentation. If they don't want to give it to me to give to you, it's very hard for me to get it for you, unless I have it or have access to it personally. Mm-hmm. This way, we know that every single department knows about the request. There's no denying it. We know there's a timetable that needs to be followed, and it helps to hold people accountable. And it was a little bit controversial for that, but not really.
And has the situation cleared itself up? In other words, are all these documents that people are asking for legitimate requests? Mm-hmm. Are they now available?
They are.
Okay.
They're fulfilled.
Well, I did a little looking, as I always do before I have
Sure.
a guest come here, and you go to the internet and you're Mr. Controversial.
Sure.
I mean, there are many hits on when you do a Google search. One of them there was like video and some audio, and so I'd like you to explain to people what happened here.
Sure.
Video and audio where a police officer came into your office. Well,
right.
What was? And then there was a separate audio track, I suspect, from a 911 service. Or
yes,
it sounded like
yes,
that's
what
it was. So
and
what
this
was
is
that
quite
all
the
about?
story. Well, it goes back to a gentleman that I had worked with on some things going on in the city, a gentleman who's very involved in the city. He comes to every single city meeting, even though he is not employed by the city, nor is he an alderman or getting paid whatsoever. But he's very concerned about what goes on in the city. He actually got involved because he emailed an alderman asking for help with a certain situation, and that alderman never emailed him back. However, he became on his email list when he was asking for money to run for re-election. So then that brought him as a new citizen activist. Well, I had a chance to get to know him over my first year in office, and I was very impressed by his technical skills and his understanding of every single thing that happens in the city. So when there became a vacancy in my department, the vacancy was my direct assistant. Well, in my office, or in the city of Belleville, the way it works, every single member of my office is in the union. Now you would think
What union is that?
A local 50.
Of?
It's a clerical union.
Okay.
Teamsters.
All right.
And the situation is, I had the expectation, and I knew going in that I wasn't going to be able to hire one person, not one person that I could trust or rely on. Now, I was lucky. I've got some great employees there. But it would be nice as an elected official to be able to come in and bring in somebody that you knew you could count on, somebody you knew had your back and supported the agenda that you wanted to bring forth. Well, immediately upon entering the office, I'm also Belleville Township Clerk. At Belleville Township, there became a vacancy in that staff. Well, the supervisor of Belleville Township, which was of that other political party, not for me, offered the job to my assistant, who had been the assistant the previous 16 years. So she took with her all of the knowledge, that pertained to the office and the job of the city clerk, which was okay. I was ready to learn on the job, and I was okay with that. I told her, do what's best for you and your family. And she did, and she's always been very kind to me. It was nothing against me, and she just simply took a better opportunity, less hours, more pay. Who wouldn't? Well, that created that vacancy. Well, the first time around, I thought about rocking the boat. I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and appoint who I want, because it says in our city ordinance that the city clerk shall appoint his assistant city clerk and shall appoint his deputy city clerk. So I thought, well, I shall do this. Well, I did not the first time. I let it go, and then I got somebody from the finance department. She was great. She wanted to be doing math, though. She didn't want to be typing minutes all the time, and that's what that job is. It's a lot of recording of meetings and preparing for meetings. Well, so then she transferred over to the treasurer's department, which left me vacant for the third time in my first year in office. So that was very hard on me, but it was okay. At that time, I decided I needed to appoint somebody that I can count on, because the ordinance states that I can. So I gave 1 month's notice that I was going to appoint this gentleman, a full month.
To whom did you give notice?
To the mayor, to HR, to all the council members, to all of my staff.
Okay.
That this gentleman will be starting work on this day, and I have appointed him to be my deputy city clerk and my assistant city clerk. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't going to give out two salaries, just one salary. He was going to carry both roles. And we were actually going to save money. And he was willing to join the union as well. Well, of course, the day came. And he was very excited to get to work. I mean, this is a great guy who just wants what's best for the city. He was at work about 45 minutes early. Well, I arrived about 25 minutes early for work. And at the time that I arrived for work, he had already been kicked out of my office. He was kicked out of my own office, somebody who I gave 1 month's notice that he was going to be there. So he was sitting out in the lobby. And I said, Michael, what's going on? He said, well, the secretary for HR told me, per the mayor, I need to get out of the office. I'm not an employee. And I said, yes, you are. Don't let them do that. And I brought him back in. And everything was fine. We walked in. A member of my office didn't like that I was going with somebody without going through the regular union bidding process and taking one of the union members. But you saw how that worked out for me. I've already had two, and they both already left. So I needed somebody I could count on. Well, I brought him back, and I sat him down in his chair. Somebody in the front of my office made a comment that you're just doing what you want, not what's best for Belleville. Because my whole time, I thought, I'm doing what's best for the city. This position needs to be non-union anyway. It needs to be appointed as it says in our own ordinances, so I'm doing what's right in my mind. And so I sat him at a seat, and I walked back into my office. Well, I hear the secretary for HR. Our HR director is nowhere to be found. He's not present at this at all. He sent his secretary, or actually the mayor sent his secretary, to interfere this morning, knowing that they were going to cause all this ruckus, to try to hurt me. And anyway, after I had told that employee in my office who had spoken so loudly back to me in the back of the office, I said, please, you need to sit down and do your job, or you have to go home. pretty straightforward and simple. I'm probably the boss that gets walked all over because I'm a nice guy, and a lot of them, when I came in, they're like, we're old enough to be your mom, and some are old enough to be my grandma. And so we have a great relationship like that. But this morning, it wasn't good. And so I had to at least put down my foot a little bit, not in a mean tone, but just a little bit. Well, that got them a little bit more riled up, even the fact that I stood up for myself as boss of my own office. I mean, how dare I, claim any control over my own office? So Peggy told the mayor on the phone, oh, the girls feel uncomfortable. You know what the mayor told her? Call the police. The mayor told the secretary of HR, you call the police. What an abuse of power that was. Well, she did call the police. And if you listen to the 911 call, she says, oh my gosh, there's a strange man behind the counter. And Dallas, you think I could get enough respect to be Mr. Cook, but I haven't received that yet in this city. Dallas is being hostile. Well, you know what? I wasn't being hostile, but maybe I should have. I've got somebody who doesn't belong in my office, and then somebody who does belong in my office who's getting the police called on him. And she should have never been there, the secretary for HR, but there she is in my office calling the police on me. Then lights and sirens flashing, about 5 officers showed up.
5 officers?
5 officers.
All right. So we're going to have to move this along because we've got about 2 minutes left here. So what was the final outcome of all this?
Well, the final outcome was the officer comes in. I did videotape him. I asked him, are you doing this at the direction of the mayor? He did say, no, I'm doing it at the direction, of the phone call that we received, the 911 call. I explained to him the situation, explained all the notice I gave, and he basically, apologized and left, and he understood the situation. And then he tried to get everyone else to exit my office. And then we went on, and then the union decided to fire back. And the union told me to my face, well, Dallas, we fight fire with fire. And they put a grievance in that was completely untrue and saying that I harassed my employees, alluding to the one comment of saying, please sit down and do your job, otherwise you need to go home. And so then I'm on the front page harassing my employees. And it was all very unfortunate. I have a great relationship with my employees, so there's no harm, no foul, but they put me through something because they simply wanted to show their might as a union. And the mayor would like to see me not be there. And so they did that to me, and it hurt, but you know what? I'm glad to have the hurt because I know I'm doing something there. And that's the way it is. I'm willing to take it.
And in the last minute here,
sure.
How do you feel that the people of Belleville who elected you are feeling about your competency to perform the task that you were hired to do?
I think they feel pretty good. It would be hard to be against what I have accomplished in my mind. I mean, so far I have stopped our city attorneys from receiving pensions and any extra benefits, saving the city about $100,000, which is more than my salary. So I've already saved it in that alone. I'm bringing Belleville Township to the end. So if the taxpayer wants somebody who's going to save money and make the city more transparent, then they've got a good guy here, and I hope that they understand that.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate your coming in today. And to my audience, I've been speaking with Dallas Cook. He is the city clerk of the city of Belleville, Illinois, which is in St. Clair County. Had a pretty good discussion here. We're going to be uploading this to YouTube, so if you didn't see all of it or want to show it to your friends, go to YouTube, look up Conversation with Lee Presser and Dallas Cook, and you'll find this. We'll see you all next time. Thank you. Goodbye.